dollar in, dollar out, you can do the math, right? You got to know what's coming in, you got to know what's going out, and you got to figure out where you can cut those expenses and cut and cut and cut.
Hey, you. Welcome back to the Wild Business Growth Podcast. This is your place to hear from a new entrepreneur every single Wednesday morning who's turning wild ideas into wild growth. I'm your host, Max Brandstetter, founder and podcast producer at Max Podcasting. And you can email me at max@maxpodcasting.com to save time with your high-quality podcast. This is episode 244. Shout out Hammerin' Hank Aaron. And today's guest is Hammerin' Billy Thompson. Billy is the president and founder of Thompson Tee, the original sweatproof undershirt. And in this episode, we talk Billy's journey from the entourage type agency world at William Morris. We talk his journey with hyperhidrosis, aka excessive sweating, and what ultimately led him to start and create the Thompson Tee. And he shares some tips for dealing with any sort of financial pressure because he's been on a roller coaster of that in his life and has some awesome tips there. It is Billy. Enjoy the show. Alrighty, we are here with Billy Thompson, president and co-founder of Thompson Tee, which is just terrific. I mean, just to throw another T in there. But really, really excited to talk to you today, Billy. Thanks for joining. And how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Max. A little bit of a late night last night. My youngest was up with a little bit of an asthma issue and coughing into the wee hours of the night. But, thus is life, parenthood, the joys of parenthood. So, but other than that, I'm super stoked to be on the show, Max. And, as I mentioned earlier, you had a bunch of great people on this show, from the creator, the voice of, Bart Simpson, which is awesome, to the creator of the Razor, to the laser tag, and all the way to the NFL Red Zone commentator, Scott Hansen, who I'm a huge fan of and believe that he should definitely be one of the highest paid commentators in the business. It's absolutely amazing what he can do, and I would love to have his job one day.
Well, thank you so much. Can I hire you as my hype man? Because that was like awesome. You've done your research and done your listening, and it's a lot of really good interviews. And I think this one is probably just going to be awful. So we're going to turn anybody away. You don't have an interesting story at all. So yeah, geez, thanks, Billy. But so. Super pumped to get to the Thompson Tee story, but before that, I saw in your background, as you were stalking me, I was stalking you, a little stalking back and forth, and I know you've had a variety of jobs in sales roles, but kind of mixed in there is you were trained at William Morris, which I think anybody who's familiar with the agency representation world knows, WME or WM, whatever you prefer, is like one of the biggest, most well-known companies in the world. Work with some pretty famous clients there. How was your experience overall from that?
It was, it's everything that people who know what it's about. It was everything that it lives up to its reputation, right? I mean, you're in the epicenter of the entertainment industry. You're touching all the different parts of from television to music to commercials to film to writing. I mean, you name it. And so it was a great experience. And it was, I do have a sales background. I was living in LA at the time, and a friend of mine, in hindsight, I don't know if this was an insult or a compliment. He said, "Hey, you'd be a great agent." Right. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, let me.
That could mean a wide variety of things depending on.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. So, I mean, anyone who's been in that agency world, that show Entourage, I think it was on HBO many years ago. I mean, that was a very accurate depiction. And I mean, there's so much insider stuff in there that I'm sure the general public just isn't aware of because they're not in the business. But that whole experience, I started in the mailroom, right? The storied mailroom of William Morris, where the likes of, Barry Diller and you name it had walked through there, and, you're getting paid $400 a week to wear a suit and walk around and deliver people's mail, and that setup is, by design. You get to meet every single agent that you're delivering mail to. You're walking into their office, you're dropping it off, you're seeing their assistant. So you're going through this training program where they expose you to all the facets of the business, but you are starting in the mailroom, and you're in there with Ivy League educated, law degree folks who were trying to get their start in the business. And it was really cool. It was really cool, and I had decided, I came to an inflection point where I was like, well, I'm either going to be all in on this agency thing, or I got to get out while I can, because I was up to start working on the CEO's desk at the time. His name was Jim Wyatt, and that's a big commitment, and I knew it was a big commitment. And so if I did that, I was going to have to stick it out. And I just realized that being an agent maybe wasn't necessarily for me. I mean, it takes a very specific skill set and tolerance, if you will, to be able to manage that role and do that as your job for however long you end up doing it. And so I ended up getting out of that, and then I had segued into selling private jets. But the experience was really cool.
Hold on, that's an awesome segue to just like brush over it. Oh yeah, I just went to selling private jet, as one does.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I didn't sell the entire aircraft, if you will, right? We sold those, what they call fractional shares and jet cards, where you could buy 25-hour blocks of private flying time. And that was something that I didn't that came out of nowhere. It was a recruiter had called me, coincidentally enough, had called me when I was driving to a job fair on the wrong day, stuck in LA traffic. I usually don't take phone calls, I don't recognize the number, but I was just stuck in traffic. So I was like, I'll take the call. And at the time I was very focused on like biomedical. My girlfriend, who's my wife now, was in the pharmaceutical industry, and those are cushy sales jobs. So I thought, okay, well, let's get into biotech, biomedical, something like that. So I was very focused on that. And when this guy called, he had mentioned, hey, I got this job. And I was like, I've never even heard of that before, right? I was like, what? I was like, okay. I started researching it some more, and I was like, yes, I can do this. And so very sort of underqualified for the job, but I met with my boss, who became a mentor of mine, and she's still crushing it. I mean, crushing it out there. Her star is continuing to rise. Huge influence on my life, and she took a chance on me, and I just went in and I crushed it for them, setting some revenue records, and their sales director of the year, and all that kind of good stuff. And the coolest part of that was meeting all of these high net worth individuals and hearing their stories and learning about what they did, and being exposed to all of that, which was really cool, because I already had an interest in that to begin with. I was always interested in the success that people had, and just trying to figure out, like, well, what did they do, right? What was their path? What did they do? How'd they make it? What happened? And that put me right front and center with that. So I really enjoyed that job, because I got to talk to these people just about what they got going on and how they do it, while selling them their private jet travel.
Well, that's how we actually met. I was in the market
Yeah,
for a
that's right.
a
I
jet
remember,
card.
Max.
No, no, no,
I
no.
think it was
I know nothing about that world,
a
but
Global Express, the ultra long range, $50 million, right to start.
that's what it was. Yes, thanks for the reminder. But it's funny that you mentioned sitting in traffic on the wrong day, because back to like your agency, William Morris roots. With Entourage, I think there's definitely parts of the show that people say are realistic, but the one part that people always point to that they say is super unrealistic is how they just like bounce around to like different parts of LA like super quick, and it's
Yeah.
just like, oh, it's so easy to get from like Santa Monica to like down to Orange County just like
Oh
that.
yeah.
So obviously living in LA, that is not the case.
No, no. I think I had a 6 mile commute, and it was 45 minutes to an hour door to door.
Oh my God, that's like quicker to run than it is to
Yeah, yeah. I
to
thought
be in your
about it a couple of
car.
times, but unfortunately, I had a suit and tie on, so I didn't think I could, jog all the way to the office in that.
That actually alludes to your t-shirt business a little bit.
Yeah,
But before
exactly.
that, if you would have stuck with the William Morris route, besides like getting the start in the mailroom, which is so common, like you've lived that, what is like an approach you've heard from others in that world that actually truly does help people move up the ranks over time?
There's a lot of your classic stuff. I mean, just to even get in there, like, and I don't want to skip over that, because that, just getting in there is pretty big, right? And albeit I had a weak referral, if you will, right? I didn't have connections in the business. I didn't have family connections, which once you're in there, you realize there's a lot of family connections that, people have throughout the industry that allows them to open a door to even get a shot to have a position, in the training program. And so I didn't have that, but I did have my roommate at the time had a friend who was there, and made the intro. And so he at least got me in the referral pile, which is huge, right? And so I did get a call from HR, but I was actually out of town at that time. And so when I got the call, I couldn't schedule the interview right away. And so when I got back to LA, I called and followed up, and I was getting nothing, right? Like nobody was. She was not returning my phone call, the lady from HR. So what I did, again, this is some cold calling sales skills, which I believe everyone can benefit from having some of that, right? Just like you had mentioned, getting the red zone Scott Hansen on you, multiple attempts. But so I actually took it upon myself to go down to the William Morris office. I knocked on the HR door. I asked for the lady. She happened to answer, which was caught me off guard. I was like, oh my goodness. But I handed her a menu from a local place that delivered lunch right around the corner. And I said, hey, I just wanted to come down, introduce myself, and I figure, you're so busy, you probably don't have time to get lunch. So here, I want to bring lunch to you. And I gave her a menu, and I gave her like a $25 gift card from that place to have lunch delivered to her. And I stuck my resume in the menu, right? And so I handed it to her, and then she just played poker face, thanked me, closed the door. I walked out of there feeling completely rejected, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to the rest of the agencies, right? Because I had already gotten this far and got the bug, so I was going to hit up CAA, ICM, and be like, do the same thing, right? So I ended up going home, kind of licking my wounds a little bit, and then boom, 3 o'clock that day, I get a phone call, and that started, the 6 rounds of interviews you got to go through and get vetted to get in there. And so I would say, in an environment like that, really any environment, without sounding cliche, it's your basic networking stuff, right? I mean, you're getting the opportunity to be put in front of every one of these agents. You got to network with their assistants. You got to look at the hierarchy and the paths to kind of pick and choose where you want to go, right? And that's big too, kind of knowing where you want to go. Do you want to be a literary agent? Did you want to be a motion picture agent? Did you want to do, actors, or did you want to go on the music side, or did you, so you kind of get the feel for that while you're there, and then you start working, and these assistants that work for these agents, they're going to eventually move on, get promoted, or do whatever, and then you get to move in to say you want to be. For me, I wanted to be a literary agent because I had gotten into the position thinking that eventually I wanted to produce movies. I loved stories and whatnot. And I thought, how can I, be an integral part in bringing this to the table? I had a little bit of a business acumen. I couldn't really act or write or direct or anything like that. So I thought, okay, well, that's where I wanted to go. I saw the scripts as the equalizer in the business. Like everything starts with a script, nothing gets done unless you have something on paper. And so I thought, okay, this is where I could kind of fit in and eventually maybe migrate to, producing films down the road. And so that's kind of where I had set myself up and the path that I wanted to go into. So I would say again, networking, right? And again, without sounding cliche, that whole luck is when opportunity meets preparedness. Well, if you continuously put yourself in positions where you can start receiving these opportunities, and if you're prepared to receive them, then a la in hindsight, it's like, oh, you were lucky. Well, it's like, yeah, of course, there's some luck involved, but as you know, you sort of create that luck, the opportunity for luck. Let's put it that way, and that's kind of how that all happened.
So from free lunches to sweating through your suit,
Yeah, yeah,
running
exactly.
6 miles on the way
Yeah,
on the way to
yeah,
work.
yeah.
Let's get to Thompson Tea.
Yep.
And that the way I said it sounds like a tea company, like drinking tea. But no, T-shirt's a really, really cool company, and I think from an original pain point that I think so many of us can relate to. So I want to start out with sweat. What is your background / history with sweat personally?
Well, necessity was the mother of invention, Max, and it was an issue that once I, probably around 7th grade, you're probably hitting puberty. I realized I had, and again, I won't forget the day that this happened because I was wearing a blue T-shirt, which, as everyone knows, shows moisture clearly, right? And I had this T-shirt on. It was the beginning of school, so we're just coming out of summer, so it was still probably a little warm. And it was homeroom, and I was probably talking to a girl at the time. And I remember when we left, I was walking down the steps to go to the first period, and I felt this wetness in my arm, and I looked down, and I thought, oh my goodness, what is that? Like, what is that, right? And then the sweat cycle, you see that, and the anxiety is like, oh no, here it comes, it's coming even more. And so I suffered through that day, right? Tried to do my best to get through that day. And then from that day moving forward, I was wearing an undershirt under a t-shirt under everything, right? Because what else did you have, right? I had to wear an undershirt, and my saving grace, thank goodness, at the time, it was probably the early '90s, graduated in '96. Like baggy clothes were really in at that time, right? I mean,
Oh
shirts,
yeah.
yeah.
And now they're back.
I know, I
You're
saw,
ahead of your time.
I
So
saw that.
we can thank Billie Eilish for that. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I saw that, right? No more skinny jeans, I guess. And that was a bit of a saving grace for me because having such baggy clothes, I'd be able to conceal it by wearing an undershirt. That kept the moisture close to my skin and absorbed to where it wouldn't hit my outer garment. And so, I would have these basketball sized pit stains by the end of the day. And I really empathize with kids in school because they can't leave, right? You're there 6 hours a day, right? You're in your clothes like 7 hours a day. You can't get out of that. And so, I grew up in a very small town in Pennsylvania, 126 kids in my graduating class. Of my little circle of friends, a handful of them had the same problem, right? And I thought, oh my gosh. And I remember when Degree came out, the antiperspirant Degree, they had that whole advertising campaign, which was great. It was like when the temperature turns up, like Degree turns up too. And they had this little temperature dial that turned up. Of course, I'm running to the store. We're all trying these new techniques. A friend of mine was like, one of my very earliest customers too. He was like, I got it. You put the Degree on, 10 swipes on each underarm, go in front of the wall mounted AC unit and let that blow your armpits dry. And then, you should be good, right? And so it just hit me that, like, if in my small group of friends in my small town, right, if three or four guys had this issue, right, and you extrapolate that across across the population, it's like this is obviously a much bigger issue than just me and what I'm dealing with. And at that time, it was again early '90s, no internet, that stuff wasn't big, so you didn't really know. You couldn't reach out to these forums and groups. And even after that, when I really started tracking this thing down, there wasn't much on hyperhidrosis. I mean, literally over the last 10 years, when we started coming on the scene, is when it kind of, the tide started shifting, right? When, more pharma companies were getting involved, the International Hyperhidrosis Society was established, and they were putting information out there. So there was a lot more resources, I mean, now than there was then, way back then. And so, but still, I knew enough to think, okay, well, if I'm dealing with this and a few of my friends are dealing with this, then how many people across the country and let alone the world are probably dealing with this? And a lot of us are wearing undershirts as it is. I thought, gosh, if you could just have an undershirt that would block it from reaching the outer garment, boom, problem solved, right? And so, of course, I tried all the silly things. I remember putting duct tape on my shirts. I remember taking my mom's,
By the way, that's my dad is a huge proponent of duct tape, and I'm becoming as well. So I think that would be his solution.
yeah, exactly, right. It's the MacGyver of all things, right? But if you have some duct tape, you can pretty much get out of everything. You can land a plane with duct tape. And so I tried that. I even tried, maxi pads and putting those in. Those were terrible. And I even tried, okay, well, what if those, like, I remember I played sports, and so I had the laminate. When they would laminate the numbers, and I thought, oh, let me go do that. I even tried to get that, and nothing really worked. And so, I just kind of toyed around and I just dealt with it. Again, baggy clothes. I knew how to live with this problem. And then in college, obviously that continued. Baggy clothes were still in, and you had a lot more freedom in college. So I just lived with it. And then I don't know, probably like, man, late '90s, I really started thinking about, okay, it's time. There's an opportunity here. A product like this doesn't exist. It could help a lot of people. I really need to start working on this thing because I needed it, right? I needed it myself. It was something I needed. And so I thought, okay, well, let me try and figure it out. And I had a friend in my hometown at the time that was going to, we were trying to get this thing off the ground, but obviously, he had no background in apparel, textiles, any of that stuff. And so, I reached out to a couple because the missing ingredient, Max, was a material that was washable, dryable, waterproof, and comfortable. Right? I needed those four attributes. I didn't want any silly inserts or, I didn't want to change the process. I wanted people to put an undershirt on because they're normally doing that, take an undershirt off, throw it in the washer, throw it in a dryer, done. Right? And so when I finally found this material, oh, and circling back to the private jet days, when I was trying to get this product off the ground, I had a client that I had reached out to. I had befriended, and and he was working on some projects. I think he was working on like an incontinence project that he was trying to get off. And so I said, "Oh, well, I got this project too." And I told him about it, and he was like, "Hey, why don't you come to my house and like show me your plan?" And that was the spark that I needed, right? You got a guy like that who's super successful, who could finance your project. Once he showed an interest in it, it was like, okay, I'm off to the races. I got to do something here. I was getting, I was into sales gigs, but I was like, you know what, sales, I can do it, sure, but it's not for me because it's a grind that just it just wasn't for me. I was getting bored with it, and I just thought, okay, I need to figure out something that I can create some equity in and create something that has some residual value. Again, I've been very fortunate to have some really good mentors in my life. The first one being, right out of college, I went to work for a .com company that had raised like $100 million in private equity. I ended up befriending the CEO there, who was a guy who sold a company in his 20s. He was like mid 30s at the time. I read a book because I was interning there. I read a book called Selling to the Veto, which is a very important top officer, and that helped tell you like, hey, get to the decision makers. Here's how you get through the gatekeepers. And I literally put that in play. Ended up, befriending his assistant. When she needed something, she would come grab me because I was an intern, and next thing you know, that was my intro to the man, right? I knew he went to this one gym, so I ended up going to this gym, and I would read all these crazy equity reports about the industry at the time, and I would drop these little sound bites on him, like posted up next to him on the treadmill. So slowly worked my way in there. But anyways, longtime mentor, he was like, Billy, listen, if you ever, you need to get equity in something, you got to get ownership in something. And so I just, I was about to have a baby too. I got married and was about to have a kid, and I thought, okay, I gotta figure this thing out. It's now or never. And I just went for it. And that investor, he ultimately didn't invest, right? Surprise, surprise. I mean, this is normal. And so I was kind of stuck with, all right, well, I can't turn back now. And at that time, I brought my business partner in. He was a family friend who coincidentally happened to have hyperhidrosis, which is the clinical term for excessive sweat. And so he had an apparel background. He was a private label manufacturer, which is a guy you would call if you wanted to start a clothing line, or some of these big brands would reach out and do a domestic line, like quick turn, quick run stuff. And so I got with him and I said, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. And he instantly knew because he had hyperhidrosis. So he knew how strong the motivator was, right? And I said, well, hey, I'm looking for a partner on this thing. Let's do this. And I had brought him in. We had created the first prototype for the potential investor, and then we went back to him with this crazy pie in the sky direct response DR, business plan where it's all formula driven. You just punch in the numbers and everything goes up, right? Anyways, he ended up not wanting to invest. But my business partner and I were already invested at that point, and so we had no choice but to slug it out and create this thing that had no distribution, like prior distribution, didn't exist on the market. Was it a shirt? Was it an antiperspirant? What was this thing? But we just, we had to just figure it all out as we went.
And not even many questions to figure out there. It's all so natural. But no,
Yeah.
well, first of all, shout out your business partner, Randy.
Yes.
My uncle's name is Randy, so we got that going. So,
Yep.
but also, there's so much there that I think is like, you see the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, and like there's so many promising things, but also the harsh reality of certain things. And I think it's kind of cool that you basically tricked yourself into starting this business because you thought you had this good investor, and then it didn't work out, and it's like, well, shit, like we're
Yeah.
we're here, we might as well do it.
Yeah.
But that one of those biggest problems early on was creating the material. So how did you find the actual material that you use to this day?
I started digging into it. I looked at, different military applications and whatnot, and I ended up finding just through, trial and error and looking and sampling, and ended up finding this material. We wanted originally to look at Gore-Tex because my investor actually he went to school with one of the Gore's family members, right? So he's like, oh yeah, I know this guy at Gore-Tex. I went to school with him. Maybe we could reach out. I was like, wow, okay. But Gore-Tex at the time, would melt in the dryer, right? You can't stick your Gore-Tex jacket on high heat, and the dryer would melt. And so we ended up finding this material that did have a medical. It was born out of a medical application to keep beds and things like that sterile. And the great thing about it was it could be steam sterilized, and steam is extraordinarily hot, right? And so
Steamy,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. It has a four-way stretch, and then that so that was problem number one. And then we encountered another problem because you can't just put this like sort of waterproof material next to your skin, because it'd be like laying down on a leather couch or sitting in your car, leather seats in your car without a shirt on. Like, could you imagine that, right? You'd be sweating even more to exacerbate the problem. And so I had to figure out a way to mitigate the thermal heat transfer from your body to this thing. And so we had to come up with a layering system and a stitching system. And this is where our patent is involved. that allowed, like you move your arms, these are independent layers in here. Even though there's a middle seam, it's not actually, because you can't punch it all the way through it. You punch a hole in something, water is going to come through. So we had to come up with this layering system and this stitching system that allowed for what we call billowing effect, right? You move your arms and it's going to draw air in and it's going to push hot air out, right? And it facilitates one of the natural properties of this material that would allow vapor to escape through it, right? And so we had to come up with this layering and stitching system that we had to use to make this thing applicable, right? So it was really a two-prong problem. It wasn't just, a waterproof membrane, if you will, that was washable, dryable. The comfort piece of it was important. And so that's where the layering piece came in. And that was, again, trial and error, just trying to figure this thing out, applying some, some science and physics, if you will. And so for something that seems so rudimentary, oh, we're just putting a patch on your underarm, a lot of thought went into the comfortability and how this thing would work. And luckily it proved successful.
But the billowing approach, if anything, it sounds really, really cool. You put a lot of heart into the actual approach, but it's a fun journey of fun and also probably nightmares for you, but of figuring out something that you laid out that criteria of like, it needs to be washable, it needs to be dryable, it needs to be waterproof, it needs to be comfortable, and you knew how important it was for the sake of your business and your product to actually use material that does those things. So
for sure,
kudos to you for putting in the groundwork before that. What would you say after getting to the point that you've created a t-shirt design that you're comfortable with selling to people? What was the next like big step or inflection point in your business and in growing in those early years?
Well, right. So you create this product, you battle test it, right? And then the next immediate step was, okay, I got to get it out of our internal testing, right? Like I can only test something so much, right? I understand I have this problem, but I needed to get other people to test it. So what we did immediately thereafter, once we had this, was I started reaching out to anyone and everyone who who had this problem. There was a couple bloggers. I went out to the International Hyperhidrosis Society. There was a there was a blogger called the Undershirt Guy.com who was all things undershirt.
Oh my, that is too perfect.
yeah, exactly. Undershirtguy.com. And I ended up, he had a section called sweat management, because one of the reasons why people wear undershirts is because of sweat management. So I reached out to him, and we got some people, 20, 30, 40, I think it was like 50 people in total. I would send them free shirts, and the only thing we asked for was their feedback and to post their feedback in the comment sections. And it blew doors. I mean, that was such a nerve-wracking moment, right? Because this is your baby, you're ready to put it out in the world, and it exceeded our expectations, right? It went out there, because there are people who they're going to breach this protection area that we have. I mean, it's going to come down, their sweat mark's going to come down to their waist, right? So we didn't know to what degree this, and it exceeded our expectations. It did great. People wrote in, gave us these amazing testimonials, which really quick is at the heart of what we do, because people who deal with this have such an issue. It impacts their quality of life. And we had people, I haven't taken my jacket off in 10 years. A mom had wrote in, my kid had dropped out of school and now he's back in school, rebuilding his social life. I mean, I get goosebumps when I talk about it, because these people, and I understand, I dealt with this, right? So it really hits at the heart of what we do and why we do it every single day, and it never gets old. Matter of fact, last week we had a guy who was a contestant on The Price is Right. Right in, he sent us a picture of it, and he talked about how he got called up to go on the show, like, come on down, right? And he was on the show, and he said he was able to raise his hands. He's always a sweaty mess, but he's able to go on that show with confidence. And he wrote in and just thanked us for it, right? And sent us the picture, like, because you got to be exciting on the show. You got to raise your hands. And he said, I was able to do that in confidence because of your product. So he wanted to thank everybody at the company. And that's always a fresh reminder. Running a business, the grind, the nuts and the bolts and whatever. But then you get something like that, and like, hey, we are making such a positive impact on people's lives, not just here in America. We get customers in 135 countries around the world. But, every day, people around the world are reaching into their closet, putting their Thompson tees on, and going forth with confidence because of it. And that's literally why we keep doing what we're doing. And so it was really cool.
You can tell from, your own experience, but also just the outpour. Sorry to use that term. Outpour.
Yeah,
too visual with the sweating.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but of like support and really life-changingness that can happen when there's something that can make an impact on like, your physical appearance and just
Right.
mental stay in the day to day. And I also, it cracks me up that your testing is like having people wear shirts because it's like something we all do every single day.
Yeah.
But for you, like that's valuable insight. So that's a pretty fun
Super huge
aspect
valuable.
of it.
Yeah.
There are two aspects of your business, two big milestones that at the time of this recording you've hit somewhat recently that I want to hit on because I'm really curious, and I think it can apply to so many other businesses out there.
Right.
First one is you've officially been in business for over 10 years now. So congrats on that.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you.
What would you say has been a secret to your longevity in the business and entrepreneurship world?
Oh man. Wow. I mean, people write books about that, right? So
And this is my way to get you to write a book while we're recording this.
At the end of the day, there's really, again, without sounding cliche, it's not there's no secret. You just, well, first off, you have your mission, right? You're going to be driven by your mission. The passion for your mission has to be big, because if you don't have passion for it, then you're not going to make it through the tough times. You're not going to keep working. People are going to outwork you because those who have the passion are going to outwork you, right? So you got to bring an incredible, work ethic, which is typically fueled by a passion for your mission, why you do what you do every day, and then a firm believer, right? And again, it's pretty simple. These are fundamentals that, we want to put the best product out there backed by the best service. Bottom line, that's what we do, right? We want to put the best product backed by the best service, drive the value for our customers so we can keep getting their business, keep earning their business and their trust. And then, you focus on those things and you build around that and you put out all the fires that happen and you persevere, right? You have to have perseverance because it's going to be tough. I mean, the first year we did 90,000 in sales, right? 90,000 in sales after 365 days of grinding and trying to figure this thing out, was not going to was not going to cover my bills, right? Was not going to cut it. And I remember at times like, oh my gosh, we gotta get to 1 million for probably me to even cover my my living expenses, and we're not even close to that. So for like the first 2 years, you didn't take any paychecks, right? No pay came out. All the money, we're bootstrapped. All the money went back in to the company, and so you have to persevere. And I remember my wife telling me at the time, like, hey, look, these things have to be hard, right? They have to be hard, because if for you in order to do it, everyone else would be doing it if it wasn't hard. And so, expect it to be hard. And that kind of changed the mindset a little bit. So it helped, persevere. And you keep doing those things, and then you try and innovate, you try and stay on top of things, stay on top of your competition, right? And again, continue to provide the best product backed by the best service, earn the customer's business, get their repeat business, and just keep it going from that standpoint. And those are the things that have kept us around, for the last 10 and kept us on top. I mean, there are, I don't even know, countless Me Too products out there right now that that are popping up left and right and literally just following in our wake and probably creating a decent business for themselves. But again, they're just Me Too products, and there's a reason why we are on top and we stay on top, because again, I do believe we put out the best product backed by the best service out there.
And on that note, so the other milestone I was curious about was you have sold over 1 million T-shirts,
Yeah.
which is awesome. I think so many of us, think about, especially if like, you got a friend or yourself who's like, like a good graphic designer or something. Like you kind of toyed with the idea of like, oh, what if we just started making T-shirts and sell them? And you have officially started a company that people have purchased over 1 million T-shirts from. So that's awesome.
Yeah,
So
and
congrats on that.
thank you, Max. Real
Go ahead.
quick, this is, I mean, we haven't shared this with anybody, but it'll be coming down the pipe soon. We're actually getting close to 2 million shirts. So
Nice. Very cool. I thought you were going to say we're getting close to 900,000. I was like, wait, how's that happen?
yeah, no, yeah, no, yeah, we're getting real close to 2 million
Very
shirts.
cool. So either way you slice it, now you're okay. So you're selling millions and millions of shirts. A million is a large number. It takes a long time to count there and to get there. But in terms of creating a product that gets sold and purchased, same thing, over 1 million times, what worked really well that allowed you to do that at such a scale?
Well, and again, it was, it's the tortoise and the hare, right? I mean, it was a slow and steady approach. First year we did 90,000. To put it in perspective, we could do $90,000 in a day now when we have a promo. But we, again, who was that? The old-fashioned way, right? One customer at a time, because we built. Well, so after we did the test trial, Max, I thought immediately, I had no understanding how big box retail worked, but I thought immediately, boom, we're going to big box, right? It was like test trial. We're like 3 months into this venture. The product is proven. We're going big box. My business partner had experience with big box retail. Of course, he was in the apparel industry. He knew how it worked. He probably thought I was crazy, right? Because I was so naive to how that all worked. I thought, I give you product, Max, and you pay me money, right? Like quid pro quo, like this for that, right? I thought that's how it worked. I didn't realize that there was terms and 120-day payouts and markdown money and guarantee sell-throughs, and where a deal could quickly go sideways and end up bankrupting your company, right? So I had lined up all the buyers for again, sales skill, right? I lined up all the buyers for the major retailers in like 2 weeks. And I think my business partner was a little surprised at that point, right? Just like, oh, like, and he had to like pump the brakes. He was like, hey, listen, there's this whole other world of like EDIs and compliance. And we just did a production run of 300 shirts, right? We bootstrapped this with $10,000 a piece. Like, I don't know if we can necessarily go into big box yet. And so I learned all that. I had to pump the brakes on that, pull back. Meanwhile, we had set this website up. It was a $20, template website that we broke because we were, bootstrapping everything, and we wanted all these cool little features and design points. So we broke the template, which came back and bit us in the rear whenever, mobile optimization was big. Well, you break the template, it's not going to be mobile optimized, right? And so we had this website going. It was trudging along. I'd reached out to bloggers and all that other stuff, and we were slowly but surely getting some sales in. We hit the PR train, right? I thought, well, we don't have money for advertising, right? We're not going to get into big box retail. These people, this problem affects, there's no real like target demographic. I mean, yeah, we have we know what our target customers are per se, but it starts at puberty. People, I've had professors and teachers who are, fit in their 50s, the big old pit stains in their dress shirts. So it was like, okay, we just got to take the PR approach. And we went out there, and as many bloggers and as many articles and as many, as all that stuff. So we really built the business in the early days off of PR, driving traffic to the website. And then we found an advisor through and I do want to plug this because I think every entrepreneur should know about this. Startup entrepreneur is the SCORE program. Are you familiar with SCORE?
I wasn't that good of a basketball player, so I didn't score that much. But I have no. It does sound familiar. Does SCORE stand for anything?
I can't remember if SCORE stands for anything, but it's a SBA funded business consulting initiative that a lot of retired executives will donate their time, and they'll set up these business consult, and it's free. It's completely free. Again, SBA funded. It's completely free. It's for people who want to start up their businesses. They can reach out to SCORE, set up these consultations, which is amazing, right? And we still talk to those guys. And when we were in California, one of the SCORE mentors that we had worked very hard to get to, two guys actually. One of them was a big executive from an advertising Chiat Day in LA. He was responsible for the 1984 Apple commercial, right? And the other guy was, the Where's the Beef Wendy's commercial, aging myself, right? So we had relied heavily on them, and I was looking to do a test market in retail. It was, I thought to myself, where does all of our customers intersect at the retail level? And it was the antiperspirant aisle, right? Of course, where they sell deodorants, antiperspirants. So I had the crazy idea to tell my business partner, hey, why don't we see if we can sell shirts in the antiperspirant aisle? You're either going to be a genius because you figured that out, or you're going to be a fool because you can't sell shirts in antiperspirant. Well, the latter happened, and maybe it was the retailer at the time. It was Rite Aid. I reached out to all the big box grocery stores, Targets and the Walmarts and you name it. And Rite Aid just happened to be the first one that responded. So we did a test market with them. I had to come up. I was in the Rite Aid measuring the antiperspirant aisle, trying to figure out how I can get a T-shirt in this little space. And so we did like 20 stores, and we put them in there, and it didn't do well. And at the time, I think this was year two, because we went from 90,000, and then year two we did 500,000, right? And so at the time, our advisor was like, listen, you have this channel that you really haven't spent too much time on. I mean, it was there, but my business partner, I don't have e-commerce experience. We didn't even have Google Analytics installed. We didn't even know what SEO was or any of that stuff, email marketing, none of that stuff, right? So he said, why don't you guys focus on this distribution channel? Forget about retail, just focus on this channel and grow it. Grow your database. And that was a turning point. And that's when we said, okay, that's what we're going to commit to doing. And then, you flash forward to, COVID and all that stuff, how we've been retail heavy. I probably wouldn't be here talking to you right now, right? I mean, because we had the database, we controlled the customers, and obviously the amazing margins that are at direct to consumer versus wholesale, it allowed us to stay alive and do all that stuff. But so to answer your question, how do we get those sales? It was slow and steady. It was focusing on the channel that we had sort of started already, and it was optimizing it. And when we brought in the digital marketing firm that we work with to this day, the gentleman who we met him through kind of networking, actually through Score. Coincidentally, we met him through Score.
Does Score stand for? No, I'm just kidding.
He had the problem too, Max. He suffered from underarm sweat. He was a digital marketer. He was doing digital marketing, and he actually wanted to come work for us. But at the time, it was so funny because he's a six-figure guy, right? He's getting paid six figures doing digital marketing, and he's coming to Randy and I. We had just moved out of a sublet office into our single office that him and I were sharing. And we weren't even really paying ourselves at that point. And we kind of asked him, well, how much would it take for you to get there? And he was like, well, I'll take a pay cut, and back it back down to like $1.50 or something like that. And we were like, oh my God, but dude, we're not even paying ourselves anything remotely close to that. So we couldn't afford him. But he ended up starting his own company. It's called Human Marketing. And so we literally were there when that transition happened. And he came in, optimized all things digital, installed the Google Analytics on our site, and then just has been driving that digital marketing ship ever since. And that's how we grew our direct-to-consumer business, to get to where we are.
If you want to grow as both an entrepreneur and a podcaster, then the Podcasting to the Max newsletter is for you. And I'm trying to think of something that rhymes with you. And it's blue. No, I'm just kidding. No, but you sign up at maxpodcasting.com/newsletter. It is an email from me every Thursday that has entrepreneurship tips and behind the scenes stories from the Wild Business Growth Podcast. It has podcasting tips, ways to help you get better as a podcaster. And it has terrible puns and jokes that are sure to make you roll your eyes, but you'll want to roll your eyes again the next week because the jokes are that good. You sign up at maxpodcasting.com/newsletter. Now, let's attempt to grow this interview. So let's grow this interview in a really corny way to wrapping up with rapid fire Q&A.
Yep.
You ready for it?
Yep, absolutely.
All right, let's get wild. We are not going to sweat through it. Or we are, but nobody will be able to tell.
Exactly.
Let's get wild. What is the biggest difference between visiting Vegas and living in Vegas?
There is life, normal life, and great life outside of the Strip.
Definitely, there has to be. I imagine it's pretty different than going there for like a bachelor or bachelorette party or something.
Yeah, exactly.
How about what is a hobby or something you do in your free time that you just have a knack for, you're really, really good at?
Oh, well, one of my favorite things to do, Max, is nothing. I literally strive to do nothing because, as a father,
I'm so sorry for breaking up your nothing time for this.
Yeah, exactly. See, I could be doing nothing right now. No, I really appreciate.
You could be doing, that's goals.
I appreciate my nothingness. I really do. I know it sounds weird, but I really do. I like to just not have anything on my plate, not have, and because it happens so rare now, right? I mean, it's as a father, as a husband, as a business owner, those opportunities to do nothing are there. But as far as like weird things, I mean, that's probably I guess the weirdest thing. But my other hobbies too is I got into I try to get out and golf every now and then. I try and I got into kind of RC car hobby, right, where you're bashing around little RC cars. It's way cheaper than going out and bashing real ATVs and your trucks and all that stuff. So that was kind of cool. I enjoy that. And I read a lot too, right? I mean, that's one of my favorite things to do is just read and I can read a lot faster than I can watch things. So I prefer to read more so than watch. But yeah, those are sort of my hobbies. Of course, you work out a couple days a week, try to anyways. I mean, I guess I don't know if that's a hobby or an obligation, but there are benefits to that.
I mean, it's definitely doing something. It's not doing nothing. So it's,
yeah.
There's more to it, but I appreciate you on the nothing front. What is, I know this can often turn into like a full list of books, but I'm going to challenge you for one book. What is one book that you're like really, really excited about that you've read recently that people would benefit from?
Oh, well, I mean, recently, of course you have your list of your favorites, but the one that I'm reading currently right now, and I found this from, Bill Gates's blog. He has a blog out there where he recommended this book, and it's been fascinating. It's Bob Igar's, I think it's called The Ride of a Lifetime.
Oh yeah, yeah, this is about is it so it's the one about like his 15 years as Disney CEO, right?
Yeah, yeah, and wow.
That seems like it's just an awesome Disney's obviously, inspiring on its own.
It is, and the big takeaway from that was like, and this is, you see things from the outside, right? And you don't realize so many things that are going on in the background, and you see people's lives out there and you think, oh, they have a charmed life, and oh, it's this, because that's just what you see, right? And let's face it, everybody who's human has got their own problems, right? I mean, if you're human, you got problems. And if you're human and you find some success, that success is not going to be, it's not going to be easily achieved. You're going to have issues. And so it was just, and I remember when Bob took over Disney, right? I thought Michael Eisner, he was like, Disney king. He reigned for like 20 years. And like all of a sudden, here's this guy who was I think the COO at the time, right? And I thought, oh, okay, well, he was just a filler, right? Like he just, something happened with Michael. He had to get out of there. So he's just a filler. He probably won't last long till they find someone. And, he talks about all that in the book, right? He talks about that perception and everything else. And come to find out, I mean, all the amazing things that he had to do. And what I also realized too, again, talking about, nothing is ever, what it appears, so to speak, right? Everyone has their issues. The challenges that he faced at Disney are the same challenges that I think any business. I think once you get past, I don't know, say maybe a million, 2 million, in sales, or really maybe can apply to any business, whether it's a restaurant or whatnot. But really, the issues and the challenges that you face, even as a small company, they're no different. And the same for us. Like they're no different as you get bigger. The mistakes just get bigger. You're moving a much bigger ship, but you still have the same issues that you face as a smaller business that you're going to face as a bigger business, right? And so to hear him talk about these things, again, you think Disney, oh, they own everything and this and that, and they just keep cranking things out. I mean, you talk about some of the tough times they went through and some of the things Bob had to navigate. It's just really, it's refreshing to know, because it's easy as a little guy to be like, oh, I just wish I was, Google, and I had mountains of cash sitting around, and insane margins that are common in the tech industry and this and that. And it's like, it's never what it appears. The problems that they got to face, the amount of stress that they got to deal with too, is just, it was eye opening and in a weird way comforting, right? Because it's like, okay, look, they're going through it too, and to see all that stuff. I mean, he talked about the Pixar deal and like meeting with Steve Jobs, and so just all these things where you're like, whoa, man, he was going through it, and so it's not all just perks of being a CEO, right? I mean, there's a lot of stress on his shoulders that he had to carry and take through. So that book's been amazing. It just, I'm almost done with it actually. I think I'm on like the last chapter, and it's an easy read. So great book.
You mentioned earlier that there were times in your life when things were a little bit tighter from a financial standpoint.
Oh yeah.
Anybody that's been through that or experienced any sort of financial pressure knows that is, it's kind of like can be a constant stressful thing there. What's your biggest tip for somebody who's, for whatever reason, experiencing some financial pressure, of how to get through it and kind of get out of it?
Well, I mean, I read, early on, I read a book called The Millionaire Mind. I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's like The Millionaire Next Door, and just some personal insight too. My mother is Korean, and I know typically Koreans are notorious for being very frugal, right? And saving their money, working hard and saving their money. So, I kind of grew up around that, but I didn't learn that lesson until very later in life. Really, it's saving as much as you could possibly save, right? And make a game out of it. I have this rule that I don't pay full retail for anything. I just believe in that. And then, like, so instead of getting that, you reverse the dopamine hit, right? Instead of having the dopamine hit of going out and buying all this stuff that you don't need, reverse it. I get a dopamine hit, so to speak, and satisfaction and gratification whenever I can save money, when I can buy something at value, when I can buy something that is a great deal, and stick to things that you need. It's like you hear people talk about, oh, I don't have any money for this and money for that, but you got, $5-6 a day to spend on, Starbucks, right? You're going out to eat lunch every day or whatever you're doing. You're dropping 20 bucks there, right? And, my first job, I was the sales guy for Pitney Bowes selling office equipment, one of my first jobs. And, that taught me a lot, right? But, there's a lot of cold calling involved. But I was packing my lunch every day. I was probably making like, $28,000-$29,000 a year at best. And I was packing my lunch every day. And after like a year, I managed to save up like 5 grand, right? And so whatever, it's and the thing is with numbers and money, that's what people don't understand is they get very emotional about it, right? But at the end of the day, the numbers are about as pure as they can get. And when it comes to money, you're dealing with really small amounts, like yields and investments are like, let's face it, 10% or less typically, right? But at the end of the day, it's, dollar in, dollar out. You can do the math, right? You got to know what's coming in, you got to know what's going out, and you got to figure out where you can cut those expenses and cut and cut and cut. Here's the thing, all the people I sold private jets to that were self-made, right? That was the fundamental there. That was the fun. It was like you don't get rich by giving your money away. You got to pay yourself first. So anyone who's going through this, make it a point. I can guarantee you, just by the virtue of living in America alone, the majority of people who think they can't cut any more costs, you probably can, right? Figure out a way to cut your costs. Make it a game. Reward yourself by seeing your savings pile up. That's what. And then obviously the flip side of that, it's like a business. Cut your costs as much as you can, right? And then on the flip side is try to increase your earnings, continuously looking to improve your situation, whether it's your professional skill or your job or whatever. You just got to increase your earnings, decrease your costs. And here's the thing, that never changes, right? Until you reach the point where again, it's subjective to whoever wants it, but you reach the point of where, hey, I don't technically have to work anymore. Good for you, right? And then you reach that point, and then maybe you can loosen it up a little bit. But there's no magic. The numbers don't lie. It's simple math, right? The numbers don't lie. And some of the wealthiest private jet clients that were self-made, that's very important, self-made. You'd be amazed at their frugality. I mean, we're talking like we're about to drop hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on, private jet time can range anywhere from like, $3,000 an hour on up to $10,000 an hour to fly. And if I could somehow, knock off a small percentage or, throw in a $5,000 catering, credit, or it just seals the deal, right? So again, cut your costs, increase your earnings. It sounds boring, it sounds rudimentary, but make a game out of it. And, trust me, you'll feel a lot better, not buying that whatever consumer item it was and, seeing some of the security pile up in the bank. Because at the end of the day, when you make more money, you just buy more expensive crap, right? You buy a more expensive watch, you buy a more expensive car. Fundamentally, it's still a watch, it's still a car. Just don't fall into that trap. And know that, like, hey, this is your money, right? This is your money. Nobody's going to give you any more. Nobody's going to pay you, down there. You got to keep it and protect it.
That's a really, really good rundown there. And yeah, I mean, it's a good reminder, finances, it comes down to the number, like keep it to its simplest form. What's coming in, what's going out. I think that's a really good way to look at it. Speaking of cutting expenses, let's cut to the last question, which I've been dying to ask since the start. What is a celebrity story that you can share from your William Morris days, which I can't pronounce. But.
Oh my gosh, I got so many of those. Oh man.
I know we might need to extend for 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, here you go, real quick. Well, and this, Kevin Bacon, right? 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. Everybody, ends up knowing Kevin Bacon somehow.
Yeah, he was on the podcast last week.
Yeah, we were at a premiere. His wife, Kira Sedgwick, right? She had a movie that she premiered, and of course we got invited to it. Which didn't happen much as a trainee, right? So it was a big thing. You got to go to this thing. Fortunately for me, they sat right in front of me by chance. It was the right place at the right time. But at the reception afterwards, I walked up to Kevin. I tried to be witty, right? And there was a show. You probably don't remember this because I was really young at the time. I probably had to have been around 5 or 6 years old. It was called V. They rebooted it, but I don't think it did very well. But it was basically these humans that were lizards, like reptiles, and their skin would peel off, right? It was called V. There was an actor called Mark Singer. He was in Beastmaster. That was another old, 80s film. Well, he looks very much like Kevin Bacon, right? And so I roll up to Kevin Bacon and I'm like, "Hey, Kevin, my name is Billy. I'm a trainee at he was a client at the agency, of course. I'm a trainee at the agency. I just want to let you know I'm a big fan of yours. I've been a fan ever since you did that show V." and he looks at me and he goes, "I didn't do that show V." And I looked at him and I didn't know what to say. I totally didn't expect that. I thought him to go, "Oh yeah, I remember that show, blah blah blah." So he caught me off guard, and I looked at him and I said, "Are you sure?" As if he wouldn't know whether he was in V or not. And he said, "Yeah, I'm sure." And he pats me on my back and he said, "You better stay in that training program." and he walks away, right? And he walks away. So I'm standing there like, I can't even believe that just happened, right? First, the immediate embarrassment. Second, it's like, you do that kind of stuff in the entertainment industry, and that you get fired. Like if Kevin Bacon happened to go to his agent and be like, "This idiot trainee said this to me," and they would fire you for stuff like that, right? And so I was like, "Oh my gosh!" But here's the crazy thing: all my trainee partners, or coworkers, right? Nobody was with me when I kind of broke away from the pack and walked up to him and just approached him. All they saw was this exchange from afar. And so when I left, they were like, "Dude, what was that? Like, what did Kevin say? Like, what'd you guys talk? I saw him like laughing and patting you on the back. Like, what'd you guys talk about?" And I said, "Oh, it was nothing, man. Just some project he's working on." And so yeah, that was my. Oh, and then I'll never forget the next day. Then the very next day, I come off the elevator with this mail cart, and there's Kevin Bacon in the lobby, and I'm like, "Oh my God!" I beeline and just go the opposite direction because I didn't want to be like, "You again." So yeah, that was my little Hollywood story, embarrassing story.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, you're like the seventh degree of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah,
Go through the 6 degrees,
yeah,
and then you got Billy.
yeah.
But oh my God, I can just imagine the sheer embarrassment there.
Oh yeah,
Well,
it was horrible.
Billy, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I mean, I feel like I just interviewed Kevin Bacon, because he's everywhere. But I really, really appreciate all your stories and tips and everything from the finance world to Thompson Tea, and it's so cool what you're doing. Where is the best place for people to try out a Thompson Tea if they're interested, as well as to connect with you online?
Well, ThompsonT.com. Obviously, you can get them there, and then Amazon. We sell through Amazon, and even internationally, we expanded through Amazon. So those two channels, you can get a Thompson Tea, and then obviously, I'm not too much on the social media scene, but I am on LinkedIn. So there's only one of me at Thompson T at LinkedIn. So there, I'm pretty active there. So feel free to reach out to me there. And otherwise, Max, I mean, time just seemed to fly by. I love talking to you. I love the show that you're doing. I love the platform, and thanks again for having me. And man, I wish you all the best of luck.
Billy, yeah, thank you so much. Just really appreciate everything and your energy and your newfound Wild Business Growth Podcast fandom. It means a lot. It was great speaking to you and Kevin Bacon. And last thing, final thoughts. It could be a quote, words to live by, words of advice, whatever you want. Just send us home here.
This is what I would tell everybody. Like, no matter what you're going through, bad times, good times, but everything is temporary, right? Everything is temporary, even the good times, right? Everything is temporary. You're going to go through it, and know that everyone else is going through it too. Okay, you're not alone. No matter what you're going through, you're not alone going through it. Okay, everyone else is going through it too, no matter what it looks like on the outside. So just find peace in that. Know that it's temporary, and don't give up. Just keep trying, right? Just keep trying, keep persevering, and you'll get through.
You are not alone. We're here for you. Billy's here for you. We're here for Billy. It works a million different ways. Billy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, sharing your incredible Thompson Tea story. And I said it again, like a tea company, TEA, but no, not the case, TEE. And thank you, wild listeners, for tuning in to another episode. If you want to hear more wild stories like this one, make sure to follow the Wild Business Growth Podcast on your favorite podcast app and tell a friend about the podcast. And try out Thompson Tea with them, and then run a marathon next to each other. Go sign up for the marathon, run all 26.2 miles. That's what it is, right? 26.2 miles together, and check each other's sweat with. Billy's legal team is probably going to be coming after me for that. I'm not sure if that's stress tested to that amount, but you can also find us on Good Pods, where there are fantastically good podcasts, recommendations, and podcast people. And for any help with podcast production, you can learn more at maxpodcasting.com and sign up for the Podcasting to the Max newsletter. All you got to do is go to maxpodcasting.com/newsletter. Until next time, let your business run wild.
Bring on the bongos!